We all like to be scared, a little bit, not too much, by extreme sports, roller coaster rides, creepy old houses with dark corners, noises off and secrets. And it doesn't take profound psychology to understand why. Small fears in a relatively safe, controlled environment prepare us, maybe, for the real catastrophes of life. And there's no better controlled environment than a ghost story, as Henry James knew when he wrote Turn of the Screw, and as Benjamin Britten knew when he adapted it for opera. That said, the subject matter of Turn of the Screw isn't altogether safe. It concerns children, young, vulnerable children who've been left alone in an old house and seem to be possessed by malevolent spirits, with a strong suggestion they've been abused in the process. This is not a cosy fireside tale. It's disturbing, it's sensitive, perhaps more so today than when Britten wrote the opera in the 1950s, though it bothered people quite enough then, and some told Britten not to touch the story because they thought it was toxic. That partly explains why Britten kept postponing work on the piece. He started in 1951, then he had a commission to write an opera for the Queen's coronation, Gloriana, which intervened. But even when that was done, he was still putting the thing off, and he didn't start serious work on the Screw until 5 months before the scheduled premiere. Then the work was frantic. Why was there so much prevarication? It's pretty sure that it was because the story had an uncomfortable element of self-revelation in it. Like many creative artists, Britten's work is often about himself at some level, but equivocating between confession and concealment. And in doing so, it returns time and again to two themes that run like idée fixe through Britten's operas: being an outsider and the corruption of innocence. Turn of the Screw gives you those themes on a plate. The outsider is a woman. She's a generic figure in a way because we don't know her name. She's just called the Governess. And she's come to take charge of 2 orphan children in a remote country house, cut off from the outside world. It's an unsettling prospect, and she's apprehensive as she travels to her new job, in a coach that we hear shuddering in the orchestral accompaniment. What will happen, she asks. Have I done the right thing? It's a combination of excitement and fear of the unknown. Classic ghost story stuff.
Nearly there. Very soon I shall know what's in store for me. Who will greet me? The children, will they be clever? Will they like me? No babies, no father, no mother, but I shall love them as I love my own, my dear ones left at home.
When she arrives, it becomes clear that all is not well. The children are alarming. They appear to be possessed by ghosts of a former governess called Miss Jessel and a former servant called Peter Quint. The new governess is horrified. She's engaged in a struggle for the souls of these children, especially the soul of the boy. She forces a kind of exorcism on him, making the boy speak Peter Quint's name, which he does. But then he dies. Why? In a way, there's a dramatic necessity about this, but it robs the story of a sense of victory, of light over dark. And you have to ask yourself what's going on here. The truth is, we never know exactly. Henry James's story is deliberately vague. There's a sort of game going on here where he lets the reader imagine for themselves. When he was asked by the writer Siegfried Sassoon what construction to put on Turn of the Screw, he merely replied, "The worst possible." But Henry James could do that because he was writing print fiction, a medium that exploits ambiguity. You're never sure that the ghosts exist because they never speak. They may be in the mind of the governess, who is a young neurotic woman struggling to handle a situation where she's out of her depth. And she's alone in a strange place, where she is very much an outsider. When you turn this into theatre, though, you have a potential problem with the ambiguity of it all. The ghosts are on-stage characters. The audience sees them, the audience hears them, they sing. Now, you could be clever and say that they're only seeing and hearing through the mind of the governess, and some productions do make that suggestion. But Britten took a different view. So far as Britten was concerned, they really exist, and he argued the point with friends of his who took a more Freudian approach. One of the clinches that Britten gives us is that although some productions have the governess on stage all the time, so we're sharing her experience, the libretto doesn't require or even suggest that. It presents the ghosts on stage by themselves. There's no mediator. And it's what happens at the very heart of the piece, where Miss Jessel and Peter Quint sing a colloquy, a ritualised conversation, alone. It's utterly chilling. And the climax uses words you won't find in Henry James because they were lifted by Britten and his librettist from a poem by W.B. Yeats. The ceremony of innocence is drowned. It's Britten's idée fixe, the destruction of innocence.
Day by day, the past remains. Take the love that loves them all. Take the careful walk behind. The ceremony of innocence is
What makes that so chilling is something the music reveals. Turn of the Screw is not grand opera, it's just 6 singers, just 13 instruments, but it's a masterpiece of construction where everything works with brilliance and transparency, the transparency of a Swiss watch. The mechanism is exposed before your eyes and ears, and you hear this metaphorical screw turning, ratcheting, as the tension builds. Because the whole score is based on a rising sequence of 12 notes of the chromatic scale, they work like this. Everything comes out of that. If you remember those first 4 notes, you hear that phrase shape again. And again. Until you reach that pivotal colloquy and realise, with a chill down the spine, who this music actually belongs to.
Day by day, the past remains. Take the love that loves them all.
It's the Song of the Ghosts, and it's been there embedded in the score all along. Truly, this is a sonic haunting. But Turn of the Screw is haunted by something else in the way it handles the theme of adults struggling to possess children. I mentioned the tensions between confession and concealment in a lot of Britten's operas. And what they almost confess is two things. One, that Benjamin Britten was gay, hence the outsider theme in the work. And two, that he was drawn emotionally toward young boys, hence the theme of corrupted innocence. Britten wasn't some drooling paedophile in a dirty mac. He was, in fact, a highly principled, highly moral human being who knew that liking young boys wasn't a good idea, and he struggled with it all his life. Not many people knew about this at the time, but a lot of people did know that he was gay, and in the 1950s, that was quite bad enough. It was a criminal offence. People like Alan Turing were imprisoned or chemically castrated for it. And at the time when Britten was putting Turn of the Screw together, a particularly vindictive Home Secretary called Maxwell Fyfe was conducting a purge of high-profile homosexuals to make a public example of them. He had a hit list. Lord Montague of Bewley was arrested and sent to prison. John Gielgud, the actor, was arrested. Cecil Beaton, the photographer, was arrested. And in December 1953, the police turned up on Britten's doorstep in Aldborough. We don't quite know what they said, but it's clear that they were there to warn him. Mr. Britten, we've got our eyes on you. We know what you're up to. And he was terrified. So terrified that he nearly abandoned the whole business of writing Turn of the Screw. Thank God he did persist, and he gave us this masterpiece, as masterpiece it is. It may only have 13 instruments, but it has spectacular colours and atmosphere, using instruments like a celesta and pentatonic scales to create a very distinctive and very disturbing beauty. There is so much beauty in this score, especially in the writing for Peter Quint, who is a dark character but utterly alluring. It's very clear that Britten wants us to like him and to be touched by him. And at the end, when he's rejected by the boy and he sings a protracted melismatic farewell, it is truly heartbreaking. And you're forced to wonder who is really in the wrong here. Is it Peter Quint? Is it the Governess? It's significant that at the end, when the boy dies, the Governess sings, "What have we done between us?" suggesting that she and Peter Quint share some kind of responsibility for what's happened. It's worth saying that to understand the characters in Turn of the Screw, it helps to know something about the people they were written for, because Britten was careful in writing for particular voices and particular personalities. Peter Quint, the role was written for his partner Peter Pears, which may explain why he made him such an attractive character. The Governess was written for a singer called Jennifer Vivian, who is sometimes forgotten these days, but she was a big star of English singing in the mid-20th century. Someone for whom Britten wrote a lot, and she created various roles in his operas, including Titania in Midsummer Night's Dream. But she was joined umbilically to this particular one of the Governess. She sang it at the first performance in Venice in 1954. I've got the programme book here. It was in the Venice Biennale. And she went on to sing it endlessly thereafter all over the world. She was the Governess. She had a brilliant coloratura voice. In fact, she was the go-to soprano of her time in this country for Handel operas and oratorios. And as a human being, she was warm, lovable, capable, but with a neurotic personality that undoubtedly shaped the way Britten saw the Governess. There was a notable instance in this opera of the circularity with which life and art can imitate each other. When Turn of the Screw opened in Venice, the boy who was singing Miles was David Hemmings, who would later grow up to be a film star, and even as a child he had a certain charisma. Britten was besotted with him, and the cast had to take turns to chaperone Hemmings in case things got a bit out of hand. So Jennifer Vivian found herself being a governess in real life, fending off actual or illusory predators. And that continued as the opera toured around Europe. She got very wound up about this. Here, for example, is a postcard she sent to a member of the English opera group who was too ill to travel with them. And she organised the signatures of everybody involved in the cast and in the orchestra to send to this person. There's all their signatures here: David Hemmings, Benjamin Britten, Peter Pears, the whole lot. It's a wonderful relic of what was going on then. But there's a more public relic of Jennifer Vivian's governess that survives in a TV film made of Turn of the Screw in 1959. It was a very big deal at the time, and it played over 2 nights at Christmas. And I assume that was because the TV company thought it was too challenging for a TV audience to watch this thing in one go. It was filmed with an intimacy that shows what a very fine singing actress she was. Though sadly, she wasn't so for very long, because she had a chronic asthmatic condition that killed her when she was still in her 40s. I want to leave you with the closing scene from that film, where she appears to have won the battle with Peter Quint, but nonetheless the boy dies, leaving her asking that question, what have we done between us? And what have they done? Sometimes the greatest art just doesn't tell you things like that. You have to decide for yourself.